On December 26th of 2024, the world of aviation changed forever. Images and videos surfaced online of apparently not only one, but two next-generation Chinese aircraft. And folks, I'm talking about 6th-generation aircraft, something that even the West doesn't have, proving that the Chinese may have finally beaten the Americans to the punch and will soon rule the skies. Well, maybe not. Let's dive into this quite unexpected development and discuss how did the Chinese build a new stealth jet, and is there an American response ready? Or have the Chinese finally surpassed the West in aircraft development? This is the story of the top secret Chinese stealth jet, the brand new J-36. Let's talk about what we know so far. The aircraft's official name hasn't been disclosed yet, but apparently it should be the J-36 because of the number 36011 seen on the forward fuselage. The J-20 prototype had 2011 painted on the fuselage, and in the end its official designation became the J-20. So this is what's leading people to believe that this new aircraft will be the J-36. Another thing pointing us in the same direction is that it's the next number after the latest fighter that entered service, the existing J-35. And did I say fighter? Well, this new aircraft may actually not be a fighter at all, and it may not even bear the J designation. So let me explain. Researching this video today was hard. Look at all these Chinese documents, news articles, and history of their aircraft development. And the nature of YouTube is that I want to get out this video fast, and I have no time to sit and read everything. That's where my new best friend comes in, Highlight AI. This isn't just like an AI assistant that points me in the right direction or quotes Wikipedia. This AI can do nearly anything. For example, it can summarize YouTube videos for me, so I can see what other experts in the industry have said and understand difficult concepts quickly to incorporate them into my script. I have to say this AI is actually really fast in replying, and let's ask it which jet is better, the F-22 Raptor or the J-36, and it's actually giving me a surprising, if maybe somewhat accurate answer. I'm actually very impressed. And it can also fact check the script, telling me if something isn't correct or factually untrue from real life research papers. It can also help me with my writing to give it more flair, reply to emails, summarize long meetings that I get stuck in and turn them into exciting to-do lists, and even analyze complex financial data to provide me insights that I might have missed. And once I'm ready to upload, the Content Creator Helper shortcut easily checks if my video is optimized to do well on socials, and if it isn't, it gives me suggestions on how it can be. And you can share all of this easily with friends and coworkers just by copying and pasting the link. Finally, we have a useful AI that can do everything. So what are you waiting for? Sign up and download the Highlight Desktop app so you can spend more time booking those flights overseas and less time on trying to understand how the Chinese even built a 6th-gen jet. Just use my link down in the description. Currently, we have no idea what will be the purpose of this aircraft, but there are two main theories which make sense. The first one is that it's going to be a heavy fighter interceptor, or that it's going to be a new strike fighter, or a fighter bomber akin to the F-15E or Su-34, just with stealth and new technologies in mind. Both of these theories are spun from the fact that this jet is massive. We saw the J-36 flying next to a J-20, and the J-20 is already a very large aircraft. With the 36 being slightly larger, this is going to be a huge beast. And there's more evidence that this aircraft can carry heavy weight, like double aft landing gear to distribute the weight evenly on the runway, and three engines. 3-engine tactical aircraft aren't new, and we already did a story about one that actually had a flying prototype, the Martin XB-51, back in the Cold War. But to see a 3-engine aircraft come back in the modern era is frankly very surprising. But the engine placement on the J-36 also speaks of volumes about what they have in mind for this next-gen aircraft. And that's from the front of the plane with its engine intakes. We can clearly see that two of the intakes, called carette intakes, are on the bottom of the fuselage, and then there is one on the upper fuselage. Separate intakes may mean separate functionality for these engines. The swept angles and inlet shapes are also similar to the F-22, and they point to a maximum speed over Mach 2 and a high supercruise speed. And that's where our two interesting theories about this third engine come in. The first, this might be a scramjet engine. A scramjet is a supersonic operated ramjet, meaning that there is no cone to slow the airflow to subsonic speeds like on a classic ramjet. The air itself would enter the intake at a supersonic speed, giving the aircraft the ability to push past the Mach 3 barrier. But the second theory is that the aircraft might use all of its engines for supercruise at a high Mach number, and then when entering enemy territory, turn off two of the engines and close the intakes to only use the middle engine in a stealth up mode to avoid detection by the enemy and perform an attack at subsonic speeds. Again, this is a very similar placement to that of the B-2 and B-21 engine intakes on top of the fuselage. Of course, there is a more realistic third option that this three-engine layout is because of the aircraft's massive size. It has a large payload capacity, it needs a lot of thrust, and the intake on top is the only logical solution to allow for a centrally located weapons bay on the bottom. And let's talk about that weapons bay. In the middle of the fuselage, there's a large container for the weapon system, clearly large enough for cruise missiles or any other heavy weaponry. Of course, payload capacity at this point, with me sitting in my armchair, is pure speculation, but some pictures point to an additional 2 weapon bays for a single missile next to the main one. So this aircraft will carry a cruise missile and then perhaps 2 smaller air-to-air missiles for defense. Analyzing further, we can see that the wings are massive and have a very interesting shape, a diamond double delta hybrid with control surfaces akin to stealth tailless bombers like the B-2 and B-21. Tailless design requires additional control surfaces on the wings to compensate for the lack of rudders, and 2 pairs of split rudders and air brakes on the outer wings are replacing them. Additionally, 3 pairs of elevons are visible, as well as actuators blended into the wing like the F-35. Which, you may or may not know, the Chinese, let's say, heavily borrowed inspiration from that specific aircraft. Another element of the tailless design is also the differential thrust control, or using the engines to maneuver the aircraft, and with 3 of them, it's going to be quite maneuverable. But another very interesting detail is the apparently 2 side-looking radars in the forward fuselage, similar to what the Su-57 has, but there are also 2 mysterious electro-optical devices as well, which we don't know what they do. Is their purpose similar to the EOTS like on the F-35 or J-20, or is it something else we can't say for sure? Now, there is a cockpit clearly seen on the top of the fuselage, so it's not an unmanned aircraft like a drone, but it does look quite large and might have a pilot and a weapons system officer seating next to each other like on the Su-34 or the F-111, and its nose is certainly large enough to house a forward-looking radar antenna. This is part of the reason that we speculate that it is a strike fighter aircraft because of the cockpit configuration. The exhaust nozzles at the back also look similar to the trench-style ones on the YF-23, but there still isn't a high enough resolution picture to make definitive statements. So, this brand new aircraft has entered the airspace of the world. Did its reveal take America by surprise? Well, not exactly. This new Chinese jet was actually quite expected, even its first presentation date. Let me explain. Back in 2019, AVIC Times published an interview with Dr. Wang Haifeng, the chief designer of the Chengdu Corporation, who stated that they were working on a 6th-gen aircraft. Normally everybody talks like this lately, and it's been taken with a grain of salt. But 2 years later, the Chinese state media again confirmed this information. And then in the same year, satellite photos showed a large diamond-shaped aircraft at a Chinese Aircraft Corporation facility. The media mostly ignored this, saying that it was fake or an exercise drone for aerial combat, etc. But then in September 2022, now retired Air Force General Mark D. Kelly, who was the then head of the Air Combat Command, said that China was working on the same kind of air combat system of systems that his service was pursuing under its next generation air dominance initiative, including a 6th generation manned fighter jet. Flash forward that same year at the Zhuhai Air Show, we got a picture of a scale model showing a Chinese tailless 6th gen aircraft. And then in 2023, AVIC released a 3D animated video showing the fighters that looked, well, like any other 6th gen proposal being thrown around on the internet. In fact, it looks kind of like half of the videos that I've done on the subject. To top it all off, in 2024, the rumor mill started to say that the Chinese were preparing to reveal their long-awaited H-20 bomber, that it might be shown to the public on a random date. That date would be the 26th of December. Bringing us to our video today. Now, you might be thinking, this seems very advanced for the Chinese, and where the heck did this technology come from? Well, the truth to be told, the Chinese have been cooking for some time. The People's Liberation Army Air Force has rapidly become a formidable player in the realm of modern military aviation. To put this in perspective, this was the Chinese latest and greatest jet just 25 years ago. With the development of next-generation fighter jets, including stealth-capable platforms like the J-20, which we've talked about on the channel before, and the latest J-35, the country has significantly advanced its capabilities in the air domain. And along with this rise in military aviation technology, so has China's ambition to develop the world's first 6th generation fighter. These aircraft, which are expected to operate in the next few decades, promise to revolutionize air combat through innovations in stealth, maneuverability, artificial intelligence, and autonomous flight systems. But all of this development was built on the shoulders of giants. A critical aspect of this evolution is the development of tailless designs, which represent a major departure of traditional aircraft architecture. And these designs that we're talking about are actually quite old and American, dating way back to the 1970s with the first stealth aircraft in the world, the F-117 Nighthawk. The fantastic thing about the Nighthawk is its shape. A hopeless diamond, as engineers called it, was a computer-generated shape based on the Skunk Works calculations that minimizes the radar cross-section. The hopeless part of the hopeless diamond is a pun to the Hope Diamond and the hopelessness in making this thing actually fly. Because back in the 1970s, fly-by-wire systems were in their infancy and computer-aided design was not a thing, and the hopeless diamond shape remained a bridge too far. So what we saw with the F-117 was just a compromise in a stealth fighter-bomber design. At least for some time. Which brings us back to this new Chinese jet. They now have the technology and the theory created originally by the Americans to create these new hyper-advanced 6th gen aircraft. And this brings us back to the reality of this plane and exactly where will it be used. And its shape does give us a bit of a hint to its role. Now, as I already mentioned, this could either be a fighter interceptor or a strike fighter tactical bomber. And why is that? Well, as we already know, there is an aircraft in development in China for years designated as the JHXX, where the J designation is for fighters and H is for bombers in the POA-AF. Now, even a scale model was displayed on the airshow similar to what we got, but it wasn't a tailless design. So it actually does make sense for China to build sort of a strike fighter tactical bomber as a deterrent of sorts, a perfect stealth aircraft with a large combat radius and modern weaponry to strike anywhere in the Pacific, and its main targets could either be islands or fleets. The perfect boogeyman. The second option for it to be a fighter interceptor makes a whole lot less sense when you examine the rest of the aircraft in the fleet. The J-20 is not a classic air superiority fighter like the F-22 or a multi-role like the Su-57, but mostly a fighter interceptor, and probably quite a good one, so there is no need to build another stealthy jet with the same purpose at the moment. making me really think that this is going to be some sort of strike bomber. Now I can already hear you typing away in the comments saying that this is not really a 6th generation aircraft. And really that all comes down to how we define a 6th generation war machine. Now we're talking about an unmanned hypersonic aircraft. Well, I hate to break it to you, but this is not it. And we still might be years away from that scenario. But let's not discredit the Chinese. On the other hand, this might really be a highly advanced 5th gen aircraft and definitely a giant leap for Chinese aircraft development. Now you might also remember that I mentioned there was a second Chinese jet. The J-36 that we've been talking about has been developed by the Chengdu Aircraft Corporation. And this other aircraft we saw is apparently being developed by the other main Chinese aircraft developer, the Shenyang, which was behind the J-35. Pictures show that this other aircraft is much smaller than the J-36, but it's still a similar size to a flanker which was escorting it. So this other aircraft could be the next gen fighter which everyone is talking about. I guess time will tell. Thus far we haven't seen the American response to this aircraft. But man, I can't wait to see how the Americans come to the table with their own version of a 6th gen fighter, particularly considering that the Chinese have got one flying in the sky. You can hear the money machines at Congress going brrrr. According to US officials, flying prototypes are already in the skies, performing flights, but just in secret now. Come on guys, you gotta believe me. And the US were very aware of this new Chinese aircraft for some time, as we previously explained. So the ball is now in Lockheed's court to see what they come up with. Perhaps it will be a new version of those Blackbird interceptors that we've had for years. Now that would be very cool. So the final questions that we have is 2025 going to be the year when we finally get a first look at the NGAD prototype? And do the Chinese have more of a surprise for us at hand than we first think? What do you guys reckon? Let me know down in the comments, and thank you so much for watching today's video. We can probably do an update on this topic in the very near future when more information becomes publicly available, so make sure you click that little subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video.